Now for a brief explanation of the default attributes that exist for any object. So first is the position. This determines where an object is within this physical space. Next is the rotation. This is the orientation that the object is. Scale is the size of the object relative to its starting location and size. Is active is whether the object is currently visible to the user in experience mode. Is affected by physics, or is static, or is kinematic, determines whether an object is affected by physics that are generated by the player. For example, an object that is kinematic, or has this mark checked, will not, if the player walked into it, the object would not move. Also, if the player was to grab and drop such an object, the object would remain floating in space. Keep that in mind when utilizing this functionality. Next is the snapped to functionality, which lets you determine locations and positions of objects so that when they are utilized, they will be attached or be guaranteed to be put into that given location. For example, rather than having a user drop an object inside of a drawer, you can guarantee you know exactly where in the drawer it will be or locations such as that. Next is the grabbable type, which is first is determining if an object can be grabbed or not, and then once it is grabbed, how it will function. The basic grab type makes it so that when an object is grabbed, it will go to the user's hand. Slider is utilized so that when an object is grabbed, it will slide backwards and forwards based off of the axes determined, whether it's X, Y, or Z, as well as the location and distance that the object can move. You would typically use something like this for drawers or, say, a sliding door. Rotator is much the same in that when you grab this object, it will not move. However, you are able to turn it. You would typically use this for something like a wheel. And by this, you would need to determine which axis it rotates around, the maximum amount it can rotate, and other functionalities like that. Dragger objects are utilized for objects that you would want to spawn within your space, where you would then want to drag them around rather than have them be held in the player's hand. So the object would remain affixed to the floor while going through this process. This is typically used for objects like carts. Sometimes you will want to utilize other objects to grab other objects. These objects are defined as grabber objects, and they will replace your hand or controller when being used in virtual reality. The best example I have of this is like a trash picker-upper or one of those grabby claw things that you would utilize where you want that to function as the grabbing implement for interacting with other objects. And you're able to determine the grab location of this as well as it of this type and how it is offset based off of those informations. You are also able to go to the customizable attributes here, which, again, there are integers, floats, strings, Boolean true-false statements, and others that you're able to utilize, which I will go into greater detail later. But this is where you're able to create and store information necessary for use throughout the simulation.